What started as a tiny paint mark on a fence quickly exploded into one of the most unbelievable neighbor disputes you'll ever hear about. A woman decided to take her 67-year-old neighbor to court, all because of a few small paint chips. According to the lawsuit, the woman claimed that when her neighbor painted the fence, some red paint accidentally got onto her side. Instead of simply cleaning it or talking things out, she began filming the elderly neighbor and eventually filed a legal complaint, insisting the fence was part of her property. But things quickly took a different turn inside the courtroom. The elderly neighbor, Miss Wilson, calmly explained that she and her husband had actually paid thousands of dollars to install the fence decades earlier. For more than 30 years, she had been the one maintaining it, repairing it, and painting it. Previous neighbors had never had a problem with it. As the judge carefully listened to both sides, the evidence started to paint a very different picture. There was no survey proving the fence belonged to the plaintiff, and decades of maintenance clearly pointed to one owner. In the end, what seemed like a serious lawsuit quickly fell apart. The judge made a decision that left the courtroom stunned and proved that sometimes, small arguments should never become big legal battles. And trust me, the final ruling completely shut this case down.
So when I purchased the house, she's correct in that I purchased the house 5 years ago, and almost 5 years ago. In 2019, I spoke to her in the spring. I didn't see her until the spring. And I asked her about the fence because the back fencing needed repair. And I have a dog, so I wanted to make sure that if I need to make any repairs on the fencing on both sides, that I was talking to the neighbors to find out whose responsibility it was so that I did the right thing. And she said that in the beginning, 3 families went in and purchased the fencing, and that, yes, this side was my side. I could plant my garden.
Who told you that?
Sharon.
Miss Wilson? Oh, okay.
It was, sir.
Okay.
And I wanted to make sure I wasn't planting my plants too close to the fence if it was her fence and what the expectations were. So she told me that, yes, that size was my side, that it was to be taken care of by me, and that I could plant up to the fence line. And we had a pretty cordial relationship as neighbors up until 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago. And after that, she had somebody come in my yard and stuff out with a weed whacker, and I said I just would like to be left alone. So when she had this fence painted, they had started painting the back end of it, which is where my backyard is. And I noticed that the red paint was getting all on my side of it. And so I went out there and I said, hey, you guys, the paint's getting getting red on my side. You please stop painting my side. I don't care what you paint her side. That's fine. That's hers. She can do what she wants, but I just don't want it on my side. So they left. And then a couple days later, they came back. The first day was like June 30th. And then the second time they came back, there was 3 of them, and they were continuing to paint. And I was like, listen, this is going to be really expensive to fix because this is such an old fence. So please, let's not get any more red paint over here. And I had talked to the one guy. He had a dog, and he was pretty nice about it. He was like, okay, well, when I come back, I might be able to fix this. I have a new tool that I have, and it might be able to get this off. And we had discussed about letting me know when they were coming back to paint the rest of it so that I could cover my plants. And he had agreed that he had some stuff that he could cover it with too, or whatever. And it seemed really cordial. And then he actually came back and painted the fence and didn't talk to me about it, but it was not a problem at that point. Then in September, they came back and repainted it. And that's when all the paint started getting on my side again. And I said, I need to stop. This is getting out of hand. And it just wasn't getting resolved. I had sent Sharon a couple texts. I had called her twice and left a voicemail. She wasn't answering. So after that, I spoke to her in her driveway and I said, listen, if we can't resolve something, I'm just going to have to take it to small claims court. And she didn't say anything. So I just decided to take it to small claims court so that we could resolve it, because she's a good person. She honestly believes that the fence is hers because she paid money towards the fence before I moved in. But I think that because I bought property and everything was included in the property, including whatever money they paid towards the fence on the property line, that it's mine. So I think that's where fusion is, and that's where we need intervention.
Okay. Ms. Wilson, did you say that the fence was jointly owned or jointly put up? by
No,
the property
no.
owners?
And I have a letter here from the old neighbor Nan that lived over there for 35 years, and that states that it wasn't her fence. She did not pay for it.
Well, I
And
can't, I'm not gonna look at the letter though, or anything else anybody else told you. You can only tell me what you got.
okay, I have,
When was the fence, hold on, when was the fence originally put up? Tell me that.
I don't know the exact dates, but like in 93, 94, somewhere in there.
And were you still a property owner where you're at now at that point?
Yes, I've been here for 33
Okay.
years.
Okay, so when the fence got put in, was there an agreement that it was a mutual agreement between property owners that a fence would be put up? Is that
No,
right?
no, this
Did
is,
you pay for the fence?
I paid for the fence. My husband and I pay
Okay, how
always,
much did you pay for the, hold on, how much did you pay for the fence then? remember?
back then it was like $4,000.
And none of the other property owners had anything to do with it?
No,
Okay. Why, how would Miss Baker get that confused if you told her it was your
I
fence?
told her that Nan and John, my old neighbors, and they had asked me if I would not paint that side of the fence as long as they maintained it, just so it would match their fence, because they went and had a fence put up too. They put a deck there and put a gate in and everything, and they wanted it to look all natural, where mine was, I was painting it. And they asked me
Okay.
would I do that for them. And
When,
when Holly came to me and talked about that, I told her that I would treat her just like I did Nan and John with the fence, just enjoy it.
with your other neighbor, when
Yeah.
did that take place? That you would only paint your side? How long ago was that? Just curious.
Like 30 years ago almost. I mean,
Oh.
it's been a long time. There has been no
Yeah.
issues on this fence until this summer. My fence is so old. It had already fallen down once. And I hired a fella, which I also have a document here of him saying he came to my home and he redug fence post holes and re-put the fence back up because it was falling down. All the cement post, the post and the cements were all rotted off at the ground level. And if it wasn't for me hiring him, there wouldn't even be a fence.
Okay. So, it's your testimony that you've maintained that fence for the last 30 years or so? Is that right?
Yes, since it was put up. Yes, sir.
Has any of the other neighbors, even before Ms. Baker, anybody make any claim to that fence or the property up to that fence?
No,
Okay.
I get along with all my neighbors, and I don't know where she got 3 neighbors were paying for it, because that is not so.
Okay. And again, I just want to make sure I understand. You've been there consistently for 30 years. No
30
breaks in time, anything like that.
33 years.
Okay. All right, Miss Baker, what can you tell me to help me out, saying that, show me that she doesn't own the fence? She's been there 30 years.
The fencing was put up there. This is what the other guy that painted told me the same
But you
story.
can't tell me what anybody else. Yeah, you can't tell me what anybody else said.
He's
Okay,
here.
well, in the evidence that I provided, I show the Genesee County GIS property line. I also have the same fencing put up in my backyard. The same fence goes the back end of my fencing, and the side fencing is all the same fencing. It was all put up at the same time.
The fence was a shadow box fence on my side, and the fence that's in her yard is solid.
No, it's not. And actually there's images of that. You can see back where my shed is.
Yeah, but that's not your fence. I'm talking about the fence that Nan and John put up in the backyard. It is not the same as mine.
It's the same fence. It's
shadow
exactly the same fence, and you can see in the images.
Where the fence line is, sir, and the old fence fell down. There's no longer I had the posts that had the pretty tops on them and everything. And where the fence was re-put up after it fell down, them posts aren't like that. So, and that's the majority of the fence. And I also had an addition put onto my home back in about 2005. And when I did, it created a vulnerable space between my fence and the back of my addition, where I was worried somebody might be able to break in and nobody would see them. So I hired this guy to come in and put 12 foot of fence onto the front of that fence, plus move the front fence and gates up to the front of my addition, to the back of my addition and everything. So, I mean, I have all that documentation here signed by these people that shows that I have maintained this fence and taken care of it. Like I said, it was on the ground a couple of times because of we live on a hill and all the drainage comes down across my backyard and stuff, and it rots everything fast.
That's 100% correct. And the back line of my property has the same issue with the fencing, where when I had to have it repaired with dig up the holes and take the cement out, the he's talking about that had the decorative top to it, I had to take those out. There's a couple of them still left, but it's all the same. It's all the same fencing and same design. But when we had repaired them, we just put up the regular post, because actually it was pretty difficult for them to dig out the cement and then re-put cement posts in. She's absolutely correct that the fence is a nightmare to fix.
Okay. Anybody got a survey for me?
I have a
The
survey.
property?
I have a
Can you get
survey
it?
from before my addition was put on, but I have it. I have where I could download it to you if you'd like, but
Can you do that for me? Can you?
I needed an
Can you-
email address though I have
Yep, I can get you. Why don't you do that then? I'll get you an email address, and can you email it to Ms. Baker too?
I can try. I'm
Sure.
67 years old. I can try, but yes.
Okay, let's give it a shot. Well, I'll give you our email.
Sometimes the smallest arguments between neighbors can turn into the biggest and most unbelievable courtroom battles. What started as a few tiny paint chips on a fence quickly spiraled into a lawsuit that left the entire courtroom wondering how something so small could go thus far. The dispute began between two neighbors who lived next to each other for several years. One of them was a woman who had recently moved into the neighborhood about 5 years earlier. On the other side was Miss Wilson, a 67-year-old homeowner who had lived there for decades and had quietly maintained her property without problems. At first, everything seemed normal between the two neighbors. But over time, tension started to build over a simple wooden fence that separated their properties. One day, Miss Wilson decided to repaint the fence to keep it looking fresh and well-maintained. It was something she had done many times before over the years. But during the painting process, a few small drops of red paint ended up on the other side of the fence. Normally, this would be the type of thing neighbors talk about for a few minutes and quickly fix. A quick wipe, a little water, and the issue would be gone. However, for the woman living next door, this small accident quickly became a serious problem. She believed that the fence actually belonged to her side of the property. According to her, when she bought the house years earlier, someone had told her that the side of the fence facing her yard was her responsibility. Because of that belief, she thought Miss Wilson had no right to paint the fence in a way that allowed paint to reach her side. Instead of knocking on the door and having a calm conversation, she decided to start documenting everything. She began recording videos of Miss Wilson near the fence, treating the situation as if something illegal was happening. Over time, the frustration grew stronger. Eventually, the woman decided that the situation was serious enough to bring to court. She officially filed a lawsuit against her elderly neighbor, claiming that the paint had damaged her property and that the fence belonged to her. When the case finally reached the courtroom, the judge listened carefully as the plaintiff explained her side of the story. She told the court that she had repeatedly asked Miss Wilson to stop painting the fence because paint kept appearing on her side. She insisted that the fence line was part of her property and that the continued painting was disrespectful and damaging. From her perspective, she believed she had every right to demand that the painting stop. She even explained that she had tried to address the situation multiple times before deciding to file the lawsuit. But once Miss Wilson began to speak, the story took a completely different direction. The 67-year-old homeowner calmly explained that the fence had been installed many years earlier, long before the current neighbor ever moved in. In fact, she told the court that she and her husband had personally paid around $4,000 to build the fence back in the early 1990s. For more than 30 years, the fence had remained exactly where it was. During that entire time, Miss Wilson had taken full responsibility for maintaining it. She repaired it whenever it needed fixing. She cleaned it whenever it became dirty. And she repainted it whenever the color began to fade. According to her testimony, none of the previous neighbors had ever created a problem about the fence. Many of them actually had friendly agreements with her regarding maintenance. Some asked her not to paint their side of the fence if they preferred to handle it themselves, and she respected those wishes. For decades, this system worked perfectly. But everything changed when the new neighbor moved in. Miss Wilson explained that when the complaints first started about the paint, she tried to solve the issue peacefully. She didn't argue or escalate the situation. Instead, she took extra time to clean the paint off the other side of the fence. She even used a power washer to remove the paint marks so that the neighbor would have nothing to complain about. However, instead of resolving the conflict, the situation became even stranger. According to the narration of the case, the woman next door began recording Miss Wilson while she was cleaning the fence. It was almost as if she was trying to gather evidence of wrongdoing, even though the elderly neighbor was simply trying to fix the problem. As the courtroom listened to both sides, it slowly became clear that the disagreement wasn't really about paint at all. The real issue was ownership of the fence. The judge began looking at the history of the property and the evidence presented by both parties. One important factor stood out immediately. Miss Wilson had maintained the fence for more than 30 years without interruption. She had paid for its installation and had taken care of it ever since. There was also no official property survey presented that showed the fence belonged to the plaintiff. Without that kind of evidence, the claim that the fence was part of her property became much harder to prove. The longer the case went on, the more it began to look like a misunderstanding that had been pushed far beyond what was reasonable. The judge reviewed notes, listened to testimony, and considered the timeline of events. Decades of maintenance and ownership were difficult to ignore. Eventually, the moment everyone in the courtroom had been waiting for finally arrived. The judge delivered the final decision. After reviewing all the evidence, the court determined that Miss Wilson had clearly been the one who installed and maintained the fence for over 30 years. There was no proof showing that the fence belonged to the neighbor who filed the lawsuit. Because of that, the judge ruled that the case had no legal basis. In simple terms, there was no valid reason for the lawsuit. The case was dismissed. Just like that, the long dispute over a few tiny paint chips came to an end. The decision confirmed that the fence belonged to Miss Wilson, and the attempt to turn a small neighborhood disagreement into a courtroom battle had completely failed. In the end, the situation became a perfect example of how small conflicts can grow into major problems when communication breaks down. Instead of a simple conversation between neighbors, the issue turned into wasted time, legal expenses, and a courtroom case that could have easily been avoided. For many people watching the situation unfold, the lesson was clear. Sometimes the smallest problems don't need lawyers, lawsuits, or courtroom battles. Sometimes they just need a simple conversation. And in this case, a few drops of paint ended up teaching a very big lesson.
Sure, that's okay. Yep. In fact, I'm going to, actually, I should have done this at the beginning. I'll just text it or chat with you as well with that address. And I just sent you that email address again, just so you have it.
Did anything come?
I don't know, Janet, nope, nothing there yet.
Okay.
Can you hold it up to the screen? Maybe I can take a look at it. I don't know if that's going to work, but let's take a look.
This is my survey.
Okay.
This was before my addition.
Okay, why don't you, yeah, I got you on two different views here. There you go. Where just point to where the fence is on that diagram on your survey there.
Okay, let me see. This would
Does it show the fence? Maybe it doesn't even show the fence. If it
well, the
doesn't show
fence wasn't there when this survey.
Oh, then that's not gonna.
But this is the survey that the fence company used to put the fence up.
Was there a line showing where the fence was gonna go?
No,
Oh, then that's not gonna help
It
us
just
one way or the
shows-
other. I thought you went with the.
and that is just my survey of the land, and I
Are there any stakes out in your yard? I don't
no,
expect either one of you to go out there right now. No, Miss Baker, what about you? Are there stakes out in your yard?
the drive.
They're under the ground. You can use a metal detector and they'll beep. That's what I had
Okay,
to
but
do.
you can't.
The,
Yeah, okay.
right before my old neighbor moved, she had a new driveway and a drainage thing and everything put there. She didn't know she was going to move at the time and stuff. And it is, I mean, our properties touch out by my driveway and her driveway touch.
Okay. I guess.
And the
okay,
only
anything
thing
you
is
want
the
to-
telephone pole is right down the middle of the property.
Okay.
Well, there's
This-
land there in between the driveways.
Okay, Miss Baker, you gotta help me out a little bit more than what, anything else you want? I did see your photos and I understand what you're saying. But what she's telling me is that that fence is something she put up and I've got nothing to dispute that she didn't install that fence.
The
Anything else
fencing
to
is
tell me differently?
connected. The fencing is connected in the back. The fencing was put up around
Okay.
this property.
But if you
And
look at your
you can
gate
see in
where
the
your
picture.
gate is, it's not attached.
The gate was put up separately with the deck, but the fencing is all the same. And you can see in the corner in the images behind the shed that it is attached.
Your fence,
And it's
honey,
the same.
goes across the back of your yard, and it isn't shadow boxed. It is solid. It's one board right next to another. Where
It's
mine
not.
is shadow boxed. The only place that shadow boxed is behind your shed and along that way.
Okay, guys, I guess I'm just gonna have to make a decision based on what both of you are telling me.
Sir, I went outside at one point when it was really, really warm at the beginning of November, and I was going to power wash off
Okay.
and she poured dish soap over my wet paint so the painters couldn't continue to paint. Anyway, I took the power washer out and I was going to get that off. And while I was out there, I decided I would go along with the power washer and hit all those spots on the fence where their brushes went on her side and get it off of the fence, because I think all of this is so trivial and stupid. Anyway, I did that, and she sat out there and videotaped me for an hour.
I took pictures, and the pictures, he has that evidence as well, ma'am. I took pictures and the pictures of the fence being just completely taken off the fence into smithers. That's also in the evidence.
Like that because
Okay, guys.
they're
All right, I'm gonna take
out.
hold on. We're not being helpful one with the other. I'm gonna get off for just a minute. I'll review my notes and come back and give you my decision, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Did my text come over?
Okay, we can go back on the record. I did get a chance to review my notes during testimony taken, all the pictures that Ms. Baker has submitted as well. I do find that Ms. Wilson has been on this property for the past 30 years, consistently on that property. She claims it is her fence. She put the fence up. There's nothing that disputed that. I've not seen a survey that shows where that fence line runs. But given all the testimony, all the evidence I have seen, that fence belongs to Ms. Wilson for today's purposes. Painted her side. I do see that there's some paint that has lapped over onto the other side of the fence. However, it is her fence based upon all the evidence today. Therefore, case is dismissed, no cause of action. Okay?
Thank you, Your
Good luck
Honor.
to both of you. All right,
Thank
you're
you.
welcome.